Backing into a normal campground can be stressful enough as is, but when you're in a campground full of pine trees and other obstructions, that process gets a little bit more complicated and has a little bit more consequences. Today I'm going to talk to you about a few techniques and some tools I use to make that job a little bit easier for you. So stick around. Now, when we're pulling in a campground, when you've got trees on both sides of you, those trees have branches, and those branches can really ruin your day. So we do a couple things to help get through campgrounds that we're unfamiliar with. So what we'll do is we'll detach our toad and we'll take a drive around. We'll actually see the approach, and I'll get out and I'll look around before I even get my coach to the campground, because a lot of times the curators of these campgrounds, they'll point you in a direction and they don't expect to have a 45-foot Class A coach going underneath their branches and making these turns. And this campground is very much like that. So we do a dry run in the truck and we size things up. And in this case, it paid off. So I want to show you a couple things that's unique to this particular campsite. So it will really help you if you actually do a dry run before you even get there. We decided to come in a complete 180 direction from what the campground host told us to do, because that enabled me to swing into here and make a clean, straight backup shot. But I staged right here, right where I'm standing, and I got out and I walked that entire site. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking high and I'm looking low, and I'm making sure that my rig can fit under those branches. I'm also looking to see my final position in that campsite as to where I'm actually going to be situated. This campsite is not level, so it made a real difficult decision on our part of exactly where to station ourselves, whether we were going to do to the left or to the right. Now in this particular coach, the Newell doesn't have a very long sewer hose, so that's our lowest common denominator. So that had to be taken out of the compartment, and my wife actually had to hold that nozzle so we could get the coach back far enough to actually be able to hook up. Looking in the opposite direction, you see it's a pretty clear shot. So by coming in from this left angle, I'm able to give a real good, clean backup without too much worry. And once again, I'm looking up at these boughs and even things like dumpsters that are strategically placed to ruin your day. And you have to keep in mind that the hazards are just not ones that you can see through your walk around. You have to understand that when you get inside the coach, small posts like these little marker posts, they are just perfectly positioned to stay out of your vision. And those things, as soon as you get in, they just have a tendency to disappear in the mirrors. So make a note of where those are, and if you have to position your spotter right in front of that post as you make a turn, then that's what you need to do. Let's talk about communication. For me, it's absolutely imperative that I put a spotter on the ground and that I have good visual and audible communication. This is where an argument will ensue. A lot of people insist on using cell phones. Others use walkie-talkies, and I can give you two negatives for both of those. Number one is cell phones are bound to fail, and typically when we get in these remote areas, we may not be able to rely upon cell phones. Walkie-talkies, they're okay. They're very weak. They tend to have a lot of interference, and what will happen sometimes is you'll get into a very crowded campground area, and guess what you've got sitting on that same channel? You've got kids with walkie-talkies going back and forth, jibber-jabbering, and you've got so much interference that, number one, you can't hear your spotter. Number two is you may be confusing someone else's communications with your own. So I don't like those at all. Instead, I am convinced that these are about the best way to go. These are called Sena Bluetooth headsets. This is the Sena Tuff-Talk Lite, and this is the Sena Expand with the short boom. These are both outdoor models, so they're semi-weatherized, but the real unique thing about these is this provides noise cancellation as well as earmuffs for audio suppression, and I use this for the spotter. Why? because the spotter can be in the back of my rig with that loud diesel motor running and hear what I'm saying from the quiet cab. What's more is this is noise canceling as well, so when she's talking to me, I don't hear a lot of the background noise of the engine or traffic or whatever. So it makes a very good isolated two-way communication. These run on Bluetooth. Now, the big advantage of that is I don't have to worry about cellular coverage, I don't have to worry about crosstalk, interference, etc., etc. The range is very good. It gets me well past a couple lengths of coaches, even with other encumbrances around. I'll use this Sena Expand with a short boom, and this is kind of an over-ear model. And this is incredibly useful because this allows audio to leak in through the sides, so I can hear around me as well. Like right now I can hear the traffic, I could hear someone else approaching me, or I will hear somebody else perhaps yell. If you got, for example, the driver wearing this is bad for the driver because I can't hear anything else around me. So it's not good for the driver to wear something that's blocking out the audio from the outside. That said, if the spotter needs to hear something, for example, there's someone else that's a third spotter or whatever, you can always, swing this earmuff up to the side and still get one ear clear. It's a very versatile tool. So I'll leave a link to these products in the description below, and make sure you tap on that title bar and toggle the descriptions open, and you'll see the links for these products. I really like them. I've got a lot of other people turned onto these as well, and I've had virtually no problems whatsoever. The last benefit I'll tell you to this particular system is, you notice I have A and B on here. That's because I actually bought a pair of these. So I have a third headset. So if I want to hook up a third spotter, or in this case, actually a third person, but a second spotter, I can give the other spare headset to someone else, and then I've got two people spotting me. Not every campground with a clear, unobstructed path requires me to have a communication system like this on board. I probably use these 30% of the time. This was one of the situations where we absolutely got hooked up to one of these because a bunch of stuff had to go on, and I'm going to walk you around and show you from my point of view all the things we had to deal with and why these headsets really came in handy. So to give you a driver's perspective, when you're backing into campgrounds like this that are encumbered with pine trees, you've got a lot to deal with. Even right now, you got the worst case scenario of a pickup truck parked to the left of me that happens to have its windshield just perfectly situated to provide glare right into my eyes as I'm backing up. You've got trees to the left, trees to the right, you've got dumpsters, you've got an angled approach. It's not really bad in this particular sense, but it's real easy to make a swing and nail a tree because these trees are not in a straight line like objects in a campground that's got concrete pads and parkways and picnic benches. They tend to all be kind of in a straight line, but here you've got a lot of random chaos going on. And if you look up, we've got overhead, and you've got encumbrances that can inhibit you from putting your awnings or slides out. So there's a lot going on these campgrounds that are in the forest. Now, it's a little obvious with the slides out, you can't see exactly what I'm referring to, but normally a spotter for me should be in the view of the mirror, straight back on the left-hand side. That's the initial starting point, and we use hand signals, clear hand signals. Both arms up to continue back, both arms crossed to stop. But that's where I want my spotter to start off with. So there are times when the spotter may have to walk around to the other side. Now, if you've got a spotter back here in the blind spot, that's a real bad position, and I will stop the rig. If my spotter has to be back here to look at the trailer hitch down low to check clearance, and that spotter cannot see my mirrors, then I can't see that spotter. So I will stop the rig. If you've got a spotter that gets in your blind spot and then you have to stop your rig, it gets really frustrating. That's where these headsets are absolutely invaluable. I'll get in the comms and say, Jan, I can't see you. Where are you? And she says, I'm checking the trailer hitch back here or whatever. I say, fine, how's it look? And she goes, well, you're about a foot off the ground. I say, okay, fine. And I'll tell her, and I'm able to direct her with these headsets. The other thing too is these are two-way exchanges. You can talk at the same time that someone else is talking. You cannot do that on a walkie-talkie. Walkie-talkies are, for me, the worst because you can't override somebody. Once they've got that push the talk button down and they start yapping, you can't interrupt them. What's more is if you're yapping, they can't interrupt you. The other thing is I don't like about a walkie-talkie is I have to take my hand off the steering wheel or other aids. I'm constantly feathering my mirrors as I'm backing up, trimming them so I can see up and down with my mirrors. My mirrors, when I'm backing up, very rarely stay where they are. Again, my pitch for hands-free two-way talking. Yeah, cell phones work a lot of times, but I don't want to rely on them. I just don't. So now see, when you have two-way communications, that spotter can be way off to the side here if they choose. They can be seeing your whole undercarriage as it swoops down here. But the big thing is I had to have Janice actually hold that hose and walk back with my rig until that hose was able to reach the sewer port. And I didn't have to really worry about seeing her in my side view mirror. She was able to say, keep coming, you got about a foot. And again, you can't do that real well with hand signals. And once again, when she's holding on the sewer hose and you see all the encumbrances here that she's got to deal with, it allows her to be hands-free as well. Do you notice how far away from the rig I am right now? Well, I can still communicate with the driver or the spotter, and that spotter is able to walk a distance away and you see a better vantage point. Now, again, if you're looking for a visual signal, it's not going to happen. But since we've got two-way communications, being off to the side here, I can communicate with the spotter to ask, how is my overhead looking? All right, you don't have to worry about your air conditioners, your satellite dishes, or just scraping branches if your spotter is able to walk far away from your rig and get an overview. One other reason to have a couple headsets with you is if, for example, this was a very difficult site and I had to swing in and miss these bows here, and I needed to have somebody watching the front of my rig. I might want a spotter out here, but yet I still have to have a spotter in the rear. So that's when you're able to give a headset to a friend, or you can even give a headset to another RVer, so long as you give them explicit instructions on what you require or expect out of them in terms of what to watch for. They'll say as a message not acknowledged as a message not received. When I'm asking for explicit visual directions or observations, if my spotter doesn't answer me back, then I'll stop and say, did you hear my question? Am I going to clear that branch to my left rear? And they say, yes, you're good. You got plenty of room. Keep coming. Then I know at least that they are acknowledging my concern. So take it slow. You've heard of the term goal, which is get out and look around. That's a good one, especially in situations like this. I'm not saying that every single time, every single site, every single campground requires you to get out and look around. There are a lot of sites that you can pull straight in at Mach speed, but this isn't one of them. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it as always, and safe travels.